So it's official. I'm gonna have to get a new camera starting, well, maybe in January. So if this old camera conks out before January, then I will obviously have to stop making videos. But it's not like my flow of videos have been so prolific that it's gonna inhibit anything really. It's just a matter of getting a new camera in January. I feel like this one's dying, so it's probably gonna bottom out pretty soon. And you might even notice that it goes in and out of focus at times, kind of, but I'm asking you to ignore it. Anyway, I'll start with a PSA. I recently had a colonoscopy, and I just want to let everyone know that if it's a procedure that you've been suggested, that has been suggested to you in terms of detecting cancer or whatever other reason, you should really go for it, especially with sedation. The sedation, blocks any sort of feeling of pain or anything like that. You don't feel anything. There's no real even emotional awareness. If you're shy or whatever, I mean, you're basically knocked out for the whole experience. You just don't notice it. Like there's no shame. There's no hurt. Even after the procedure, when you wake up, there's no uncomfortable feeling. There might be some air in your colon because of they blow air in there sometimes to open up the colon so the camera can see better. But otherwise, there's no pain. There's no emotional, emotional. I don't know what the word is, but there's no distress over it. There's no, it completely knocks you out. And I know that, I know cancer can be detected with blood tests, etc., etc. But what I'm saying is, if the reason you're not going in for a colonoscopy includes, or is, shame or emotional distress or whatever, then you could definitely bypass that, because it's just a totally uninvasive procedure. Not in the physical sense, but in all other senses. You're literally dead basically while they do this to you. So you don't notice anything, and it's not like the doctors and the nurses make you very aware that you have a metal snake inside you for while you're knocked out. There's absolutely no feeling whatsoever. So if you're up for a colonoscopy and that's troubling you, trust me, it means nothing really. Like I said, you're knocked out. You don't notice anything at all, and you just wake up feeling fine. There were some check marks that they had to give on the evaluation form about whether I was verbal or not after the anesthetic, and I can tell you, when I woke up, I was completely verbal. I just felt as normal as possible. There were no side effects or anything like that. I just felt completely normal. The whole thing takes about 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes, you awake naturally from the anesthetic, and you're just fine. There's nothing. So, and the procedure's done, and you're all the more wiser for it, because they can tell you what is wrong. I won't tell you what my diagnosis was, but yeah, I can tell you that the procedure itself is non-invasive in all senses, except for physically it's in your colon. But yeah, that's about it. Anyway, I feel like I have to up my game when it comes to the atheist thing, and I've been considering this for a long time. If you've noticed in the past year, my videos and my writing has slowed to a snail's pace, and I really feel like I have to up my game. But I feel like I've been just been doing a lot of listening, and all that listening just kind of makes me question a lot of things. Not really the core of atheism or anything. I'm not having some sort of life-changing event, but I mean, there's just so much to know, so much to read, and so much to listen to, that you find yourself in fuzzy areas sometimes. It's not that the whole idea about atheism is to look for some sort of confirmation bias that where you can sit comfortably numb. There will be things that especially if you listen to debates and you listen to people who do have disagreements and opposing views, etc. You enter fuzzy territory, and that's natural. And I think it's healthy actually to end up in those areas. But I know that my videos have become repetitive, and I do have to look into how to get past that. And there's tons of ways. It's not like I'm listening to all this stuff and it's just going over my head. I am seeing a lot of different avenues. I just don't know which one is the best one to take. There's the old mission statement of Spiralvent that was supposed to be philosophical exploration of atheism. But I think there's so much to be said politically, and a lot of these philosophical arguments are so old and so dead. I mean, they get not regurgitated, but they do get reinterpreted and sort of pushed out in common language, etc., etc. So you notice those things as well. They do, they don't say it as fancily as, say, Kant or St. Augustine would have said it. But the arguments are still there, and they're still up for debate. Obviously, I mean, it's old philosophy, but they're enduring questions, and they have no real simple answer to them, even scientifically. So they're up for debate, and it is an avenue I could still take with Spiralvent. And I'm also finding that I kind of go for the whim of whatever news story is biggest at the time. Not necessarily the biggest in terms of overall bigness, but whatever hits my feed basically and seems interesting, I tend to go for it. But I feel maybe a more methodical approach to articles I post, etc., on Spiralvent. But these are just avenues I'm exploring. It's not they're not to be taken too seriously at this point anyway. It's something to just really sit back and think about. Anyway, with that being said, I recently posted something that was kind of how you say nebulous, and I was very aware of the self-referentiality of it. So I'll read it to you, but in case you want to reread it, you could go on Spiralvent and reread it. But so basically, what I said was. Give me a second. Okay. So I said, depending on whose perspective one may consider, religious belief is this nebula of intensity. On one hand, it's the crux of your immortal soul, while on the other, only deserving of a moderate adherence. On one level, religious belief is so sewn into the believer's existence that it's not allowed to be demoted, but on another, not so important as to affect suicidal behaviour. So it's kind of a mouthful. It sounds kind of quasi-intellectual, blah, blah, blah. But my point was, I was really kind of asking people to consider where they stand on religion, and it's a theme that I've routinely used in some of these videos. But I'm saying, on the level of being a moderate, whatever, Christian or Muslim or Hindu or whatever, logically speaking, you would be saying, if you value logic at all, logically speaking, you would be saying that this whole sort of immortal soul stuff is not so important as to be completely devoted to the religion. It's saying that you could get rid of bits and pieces of your religion. It's not that important to your immortal soul. So, I mean, what are you saying about religion exactly? Now, this is considering you believe in the immortal soul, etc., etc. I mean, there might be atheist Muslims out there who they're Muslim only through pure doctrine and through only using the Quran as a guideline to whatever else they believe. But even in that sense, and that's sort of a scenario that kind of satisfies the requirements of my argument a little bit, but it still leaves out all the soul stuff. Like, I mean, what are you saying? You're essentially gutting the religion, and then it's a slippery slope from there, because what else can you not believe and still be devout or still be moderate, whatever? But I mean, it's really a tricky position to be in, intellectually speaking. If you're a moderate anything, you're really not looking at you're not looking at the religion as it's supposed to be looked at or has been taught throughout the ages by even more devout people than you are. Anyway, and the other thing is I was trying to kind of get this view out there that, I mean, there is a slippery slope when it comes to belief, because how far do you want to take it? The doctrine definitely contains verses and sayings, etc., that support any sort of misguided view. Like they're in there and they're open for interpretation. I just watched this. We just watched this talk, Sarah Hayter's talk with, I forget the name of the guest, but it's posted on Spiralvent in case you want to check it out. But they were talking about Islam being a red herring, and it's true for all religions, all doctrine. The interpretations don't really matter that much, because once somebody's gotten that interpretation down in their heads, it's expressed physically in the real world. You think about anti-homosexual policy and behavior and things like that that exists throughout the world. these things come from religion. So I mean, once you get that down in your head, it's pure belief, and like, you know, it's not to be questioned, etc., etc. So I mean, you know, but it's all there in the doctrine to be interpreted however you want. In some cases, you can't really, when it comes to fundamentalism, you can't really say there's an interpretation or there's an interpretive act that's buffering, you know, the way you act and what actually happens, because if you read the writing, and you can find lots of them, they're pretty literal. It's a huge leap of faith to think of it differently. They're pretty literal, and it gives extremists and fundamentalists their fodder, basically. And I hate to you know, to minimize the effect. You know, it's not really fodder. It's religious belief. It involves your immortal soul. But so that's what I was trying to inspire with that little piece of writing. But it's an idea I've used before in terms of, you know, trying to get people to, and maybe that's another avenue I use as well, to get people to feel the pull in either direction. So yeah, that might be a thing I start doing as well. Putting, you know, creatively putting these ambiguous pieces of writing that kind of stretch the imagination a bit. I'm not saying I am stretching anybody's imagination, but I'm thinking maybe that's an avenue I explore and get better with. So, how do I... oops. So, yeah, so that's essentially what I want to say. There's not a whole lot else. But yeah, that's about it. Okay, bye.